Robinson. And she drove the bus and she taught third grade. And she drove the bus there. Then after the seventh grade, we went to Manassas.
So what was James Lee now that's in Falls Church.
Yes.
What was James Lee Elementary like?
It was different. I've seen more kids than I've seen before, at one time. And I'm still good friends with a lot of those kids that we went to school with, and that was back in 48. But it was good. It was strict. The principal was very strict. I can remember, and I was scared. We all knew.
Okay, it was something new for you.
Something new, yeah.
What was the principal's name?
Henderson. Nellie Henderson. That's Nellie Henderson. And one of the teachers was Miss Robb. Then there was Miss Lomax. And Mrs. of course, Marjorie Robinson. And that's all. I can't remember any. I don't think we had any men teachers at that time at James Lee.
So what was the facility like, the building?
Well, it was new. It was brick. It had a cafeteria and an auditorium. And it was different. We had the office, where the administrative part was. It was different.
So now you go to Manassas.
Yeah.
So you went to the 1st to the 7th grade, but no 8th grade.
No 8th grade. Yes.
And then you go to Manassas.
Yeah.
So let's talk about being at Manassas.
Well, first, going to Manassas was, I loved it. But I couldn't understand why I had to pass so many schools to get to Manassas. Pass Falls Church, Annandale, and Fairfax to go to Manassas.
And they were white schools?
Yes, they were white schools. And there were times when the buses would pass and the white kids would either throw something out of the bus or always were yelling, calling us names and everything. And of course the buses were cold. Some of the windows wouldn't go up.
So how long did it take you to get to school?
A good hour and a half. When we left home, a lot of times it was dark. And when we returned, it was dark, especially in the wintertime.
So what were the conditions at Manassas Regional High School or Industrial High School?
The school was cold. It was cold, but it was rather clean. And well, it was all new because we weren't in one place all day. You would be in this area for, I think, about 45 minutes for a class, then you go to another class like that throughout the day. And the teachers were very helpful and kind. So it was great.
Talk about the kids that went to that school. Can you give us an idea of where they lived?
Yes. I just talked to one of my friends that from Delaplane, and I understand that he had to walk pretty close to 2 miles to catch a bus. And the kids from Front Row stayed on campus. They had a girls' dormitory. Stayed on campus, they had a boys' dormitory. And then there were kids coming out of Gum Springs, Fort Belvoir, and Seminary, the kid from Seminary. There was Crossroads, Mount Pleasant, Lincoln, Franklin, Fairfax, Sideburn, and that's all I can think of right now.
Now you have an interesting story because you were a bus driver.
Yes.
So can you tell us about being a student bus driver?
Well, when I started driving the bus, I was 16, and I was a student substitute driver at first, which paid $35 a month. And the next school term, I was a student driver, and they paid $65 a month. And my route started in Bellis Crossroads. I would go to Mount Pleasant, which was in Annandale, and Lincolnian, which was off of 236. Then I would go to Fairfax and Sideburn and stop in Camp Washington and Centerville, then go on to Manassas.
And how old were you?
16,
And how many students were on the bus?
30 to 35.
What were the conditions of the bus?
Terrible. They were raggedy and cold.
Did it ever break down?
Yes, we had a few, but it really wasn't that bad because we had to take it into the shop ever so often, and well, they didn't. You couldn't go fast in them, so and we were taught to take care of things, basically from home. We didn't get any training from the county.
How'd the county treat black bus drivers back then?
Well, I don't know of anything negative other than we were underpaid, but I don't know of any. I can't remember anything where they were anything really negative toward them. At least I didn't experience anything like that. And I didn't hear any of the other drivers complain about that. The only thing we complained about was the cold buses and the distance we had to travel.
How many white high schools did you pass to get to Manassas when you were driving?
2, coming from NVCROH Road, I passed 2. Now the kid from Falls Church, they passed Falls Church, high school, and I don't know about the other kids that's coming out of Fort Belvoir. I don't know. I know there was Mount Vernon. There was Mount Vernon High, but I don't know what the other.
Tell us the names of some of the other bus drivers.
Reverend Phillips from Falls Church. There was a Robert Johnson from Chesterbrook. A Robert Addison drove a Fauquier County bus. And Ben Holland from Gum Springs. And I think he must have drove for 40 years because he drove a bus when my cousin was in school in 42. He drove a bus. And then he drove to Luther Jackson.
So what year was this that you drove for Manassas as a student?
52. I drove 52, 53, and 54.
How did the students treat you?
Fine. I've always had very good rapport with the kids, we got along good. But there was no negative thing like I read about now. As far as the kids fighting and stuff like that, there was nothing like that. But number one, you had to answer to the principal. And I'm sure most of it had to answer to, home. Let's get home. I know I did.
How were you recruited to be a student bus driver?
I had to walk. I got tired of walking so far to the bus stop. And I wanted to be a driver. I wanted to drive the bus. It was something that I initiated on my own. I wasn't, approached in any way.
And back then they would let people that young drive buses?
Yes, you would, there was a little series of questions and stuff like that you would ask, and you had to have your driver's license, pass your driver's test, which wasn't bad, and go through a short driving course.
And so then after you drove for Manassas, you drove for
Luther Jackson.
What was that like?
Well, it was entirely different because I wasn't traveling the distance anymore, and you were in close contact with the teachers more. It was just a different setup altogether, a little more regulated. Everything. But then I paid one up to I think $165 a month.
So that made it a little better, right?
that made it a little better.
And you weren't a student then?
I wasn't a student, no.
Right.
I was just dating her.
Okay. And so once you graduated from Manassas, you had talked about some of the things that you did for leisure, like going to Front Royal,
Oh yeah.
to parties.
Yes, we would go to Front Row on weekends. You know, we'd go up there on the weekend, and there were a few dance halls along the way. There was one in Gainesville, and there was one. There was always places to go in Front Row. You know, and people were nice. We didn't have any way to stay overnight, so we would, if we went to one place and we stayed there Friday night, you know, we would ride maybe all day the next day and go places, and we would go to the bus stop to wash up to the Trailway Station in Front Row. And well, we would go from Fredericksburg to Front Row to some of the places in West Virginia and down in Maryland. There wasn't too many areas where something going on we didn't cover. And I always traveled with older guys who really looked out for us.
Were you scared that something may happen
No,
racially? No.
no.
What about food? Could you just stop anywhere to get something to eat?
There's no place. There was a place in Washington on the wharf called Benny Barton's, and we used to, you know, you stop there, you got probably two pounds of fish on a sandwich. So we would stop there and get a sandwich, but that was about the only place. That was kind of it wasn't inside, you know, you go to a window. But I don't know of any places really. In Washington there was a few places, but I was too young at that time.
So when you traveled, what did you do for food?
Take food